Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
The Todd-Cast is filmed before a live feline audience. All right, good evening, everybody. And once again, we're back. Well, kind of back. But tonight, it's going to be Kris and I, rather than Alice. Alice has decided that she said she didn't have anything to contribute for this one. I disagree, but that's up to her. But Kris and I are going to be doing the history of mining in Colorado. And basically everything that entails with digging in the ground in Colorado and pulling out gold in Colorado, and where it all began, and honestly where it's all going, or at least kind of where it's going. You know, the reason I say that is because mining is not done in Colorado.
No, it's still alive and kicking.
Yeah, there's only one real... What's that?
Do you have the camera on?
There's our first edit.
Yeah.
Okay. There's only one actual active professional mining company in Colorado right now. That's a large company that's pulling out sizable amounts of minerals. I can't remember the name of it. I will probably put it right here once I figure it out. I do know that Cricket worked at it for a while.
Okay.
And she actually has a little ounce of gold that she was able to have from that mine. She worked in the mill. So, other than that...
I think there's still coal mining going on.
Still what?
Coal mining?
Not as much coal mining here as is in Wyoming.
Yeah, but there is some in northern Colorado.
Okay, yeah, I don't know of any of the northern Colorado mines. Oh. I guess first place to start is where it all started. There have been several theories about where it actually started and what actually kicked it off. I do know that from my history course that I took when I was in school, there were discoveries of gold and rumors of gold since the mid to late 16th century for Colorado.
Not surprising, since the conquistadors were very interested in such things.
Oh, yeah. The conquistadors, yes, were very interested. But that does lead to a little aside. Apparently, the Spanish crown entered into a treaty with the Utes at the time that there were certain areas of Colorado that the Spaniards were not allowed to go into. That was highly illegal for them to be in. And those were the San Luis and the San Juans.
Yeah.
Where all the gold is.
Of course. Yeah.
So
such begins another chapter of the sad history of how the Europeans and the trounced the Native Americans they'd have the treaties, and while it was convenient, and then when they found resources that they wanted on the land that they said the Utes could have, things changed.
And unfortunately, that's going to be a theme through this entire thing tonight, even present day.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and even more next week when we talk about southern Colorado.
Oh, Don't get ahead of us.
Okay, I won't.
Don't get ahead of
No,
us.
I won't.
That's that's going to be something else all entirely. That is.
Yeah, we don't have the tissues here tonight, so
Yeah,
we won't get into it tonight.
There are things of it that are very, very cool, and then there are things that are very, very painful.
Yeah.
So, anyway, where was I? We were talking about the gold rush, where it began.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there are some that say that the gold rush for Colorado, there were a couple actually of gold rushes in Colorado.
Okay.
The main one that everybody talks about is the one that started about 1857, 1858, right around Idaho Springs.
Oh, okay.
That's the one that everybody talks about. Nobody really talks about Auraria.
True.
Nobody talks about the confluence.
No, that's very true. And actually, my dad's notes is that one of the longest running gold mines was in Cripple Creek, founded in the 1850s by a cowboy. And it's one of the longest running gold mines in the U.S.
That's very interesting because the gold rush in Cripple Creek didn't start until 1898.
Well, but he discovered it in the 1850s, and then word got out, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when the whole Pikes Peak portion of the gold rush really started.
Okay.
But they did call the gold rush from 1857 and 1858 the Pikes Peak Gold Rush.
Yeah.
And the reason is because if you're going to draw people to the mountains, you're going to name it after the first mountain you see when you come into Colorado, and it's going to be Pikes Peak.
Yes.
And that one, that's again, we'll go back and talk about how Zebulon Pike was responsible for that one in 1807. So, yeah, Colorado, the discovery of Colorado has been around for centuries.
Oh, yes.
So, there we are on that. So, yeah, the first places that gold were found here on the Front Range were in the South Platte, in Cherry Creek, and in the confluence area there, up in Ralston, in Arvada, and all the way up into Golden, naturally.
Yes,
and all that Clear Creek gold there.
Oh, yeah.
And that just all the way up to Blackhawk, and then Blackhawk across the hill over to Idaho Springs, and then Central City was a major gold camp for a long time.
Oh, yes. Gold and silver. In
Yeah.
Central City.
I've got a little picture of what Central City looked like in the late 1800s at the beginning of at the bumper of this. So there's that. But we've come a long way, but it was a scrabbling hard crawl to get from where we were to where we are.
Yeah.
From what I remember from my notes, the gold rush in 1857/1858 lasted for 6 months.
Yeah.
They pulled almost everything out of the hills that they could actually get to.
That was easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 6 months.
Yeah.
The reason is that a lot of people came here for the placer mining, not realizing that once they got up in Idaho Springs and Blackhawk area, that was lode mining.
Yeah.
That was lode gold.
Right.
LODE. That means it was gold in rock.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot harder.
So
a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, expensive and dangerous.
Yes. Yeah. Expensive.
Wildly dangerous.
And equipment and how you have to get the gold out, but also in human lives.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
There are certain things that happen when you start tunneling.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. One, once you start taking things away and creating voids in what you assume to be a solid structure, you have a lot of weight overhead that now has nothing there to stop it or to hold it up. So gravity wants to work on it. There's also that you're going to find natural voids.
Yes.
In the rock where there is no air. And it's not the fact of there's gases that will kill you. No, it's the fact there is no air. And the nickname for it was dead air, because that's what it was. You go in, you suffocate, you die. That's it.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, Dad has a story of one of the mines that he worked in where he went in and he looked. There were cracks in the walls and the ceiling. And if cracks are running a certain direction, then gravity pushes down on the cracks and you're still fine.
Yeah.
But if they're the other direction, gravity's working against the cracks and you're going to have a cave in. And
Right.
the quote unquote PhD engineer that came in and assessed the place, who hadn't actually been working there, said, "Oh, everything's hunky dory. You have nothing to worry about." And Dad, he said he'd been there for 2 weeks. And he stood up in front of all of these executives and said, "Oh no, these are running the wrong direction. You're going to have a cave in if you keep mining." And they said, "Why should we believe you over PhD, dude?" And he said, "Fair enough." And sure enough, 2 months later, there was a cave in. Fortunately, it was during shift change, so they didn't lose anybody and nobody was injured. But yeah, it was a kind of a scary "I told you so" of you need to look at all the cracks, not just the big one.
Right. Now, adding to that, not only the cave-ins, and like I said about the dead air, about there being voids where there is no air.
Right.
There are also voids where there are gases.
Yes.
And these are not gases that are friendly, kind, or happy.
No.
These are gases that will explode.
Yep.
In our last episode, I talked about how Colorado is a volcanic area, or at least the Rocky Mountains in Colorado are very volcanic.
Yeah.
That is also a leftover from the volcanic formations in the Rocky Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Is there are these pockets of gas.
Mm-hmm.
It's also left over from the dinosaurs that there are these pockets of natural gas.
Sure.
And the last thing that you want to have happen is, say that you're in the mine and you're drilling. And I think Merida wants your attention.
She does. Yes.
Okay, never mind. Anyway, you're drilling, your hands doing hand steel, and the steel against the rock will spark. Once that spark hits, and if the spark hits when you break through the void into the chamber with the gas, well, you don't need dynamite.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
So, there's that. Like I said, hard rock mining and tunnel, or essentially underground mining or tunnel mining, is dangerous work.
It really is, yes. And even using dynamite, you tap into that natural gas and you're suddenly blowing stuff up you weren't planning on.
Right.
And creating dangerous pockets and that need assessment and all of that. Yeah.
Now imagine if you're using nitroglycerin.
Right.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And that goes back to the folks that were doing the digging and tunneling for the trains.
Mm-hmm.
For the railway.
Yeah.
That's where nitroglycerin got its real big start. It wasn't in the mining industry. It was for the railroad.
Yeah.
So, but that's, again, another story, and yet another story that we can actually talk about, because that ties into the mining history in Colorado and the Santa Fe line.
Yes.
And the Burlington Northern line and everything, how all that got into put together. And then we can talk about the cattle trails and how
well, I was going to talk about how that brought in certain populations that didn't come in originally, and pockets of those populations that still reside in the Denver area, Trinidad, Pueblo, from the railroad. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, okay, a little aside about the railroad. There were no direct eastern rail lines into Denver.
No.
At the time we're talking about. This is like the 1850s, 1860s, 1890s, and farther. They all came into Cheyenne.
Exactly.
And then from Cheyenne, you took another train down to Denver.
Mm-hmm.
You travel south. And from Denver, you travel farther south, all the way down to Santa Fe.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, and the railroads followed the same routes, usually followed the same routes as the cattle trails. Sure. Because established road or established trail, why reinvent the wheel here?
Exactly.
So, anyway, I'm all over the map now. So, And now I've got kitties on the desk and everything.
Mhm.
Let's see. So I've talked a little bit already about what I had to say. So, Kris, you got stuff.
Boy, do I. Did you want to talk about Auraria and the confluence a little bit more before I launch into my long...
Oh my, I can't remember exactly when gold was discovered in Auraria. I do know that when there was a group of settlers that came through, and it was a group of settlers from Georgia with a group of Cherokee that was with them, and they all came down to the confluence, and they pulled out nugget gold.
Yeah.
In Auraria. The little town of Auraria was then founded because it was a gold camp first.
Sure.
But the town of Auraria, and the reason I kind of sort of near and dear to my heart is because the first college I went to was Metropolitan State College. Metropolitan State College is down on what is called Auraria campus.
Mm-hmm.
Auraria campus is the original site of the town of Auraria. And some of the same buildings still exist.
Yeah, they do. As the like administrative offices.
Mm-hmm. And some classrooms.
And okay. Yeah.
Yeah. They've turned some into classrooms.
I'm thinking of the little homes.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never got to go to class there. I also attended college, both undergraduate and grad school down at that campus for CU. Yeah.
Yep. I've attended all three schools on that campus.
Yeah,
I've attended
that's
Metropolitan State College, Community College of Denver, and CU Denver.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's about all I had about Auraria. It's still there. It's a still neat little historic place. You can actually go visit it and go walk around, because if you go to anybody's allowed to go ahead and walk on the campus, or you just go visit the campus. It is a neat little walk. It's very short, but it's a neat little walk.
It is. And it's a lot easier to get to now because they've blocked off more of the roads from when I went to school down there back in the 80s. And now it's a true campus where you park and walk in, and you've got your square and surrounded by the buildings. And yeah, so it's a really fun little campus to walk around. And some of the older buildings on the, everything's cattywampus down there. So northwest-ish side of the campus, on the other side of Auraria Parkway, some of those there's some older buildings over there where there's some restaurants and such now. And then on the other side, the old Ironworks building, which is now a dance club. And
you're talking about the southwest portion of the campus.
Well,
that's southeast portion.
Yeah,
southeast portion of campus.
On the other side, there's I just think of Casey's because it's baseball themed, and it's where I go right before we go to concerts over there at the Ball Arena.
Oh, okay.
So there's some things that have come up over there as the city's been revitalized on that end of town.
Well, and what was it? Back in the 80s, they refurbished the old Tivoli Brewery.
That's right.
They turned it originally into a shopping mall because it was the 80s. So, what do? We
have to have them all.
We
everywhere.
have a shopping mall.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun. It was kind of nice. After a while, it turned into more of the student center.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is today.
Yeah. Well, it was becoming more the student center. There was still a lot of shops there, right at the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
1990s.
Yeah.
We lived in the 1900s.
Amazing.
They still had a brewery there for a very short time.
Yep.
And now it is mainly administrative offices, student help things, and advising,
fast food joints that have stayed through time, that are handy for students.
There's a tiny little food court at the bottom level of it, and it's mostly dominated by Subway.
That's what I was going to say. Pretty sure it's Subway. There's like a little Chinese place down there. Typical what you'd find in a fast food court. Okay. So here we go. As I've mentioned before, my first years of life were spent in small towns up in the mountains of Colorado, as my dad worked as a mining engineer for a variety of different places. So The first place I asked him about is Summitville because he talked about it. He talks about it a lot to this day. I think it was one of his favorite jobs, even though I don't think he was there for too many years. However, he made some significant inventions or creative ways of creative solutions to make the mine more efficient and safer. So his summary, I reached out to him and asked him about it. And he said there are 3 vertical veins that contain copper, silver, and gold. So they were mining all 3. And the first mining was in the 1850s there. And while what I've noticed is many of the mining history sites about Summitville, because I tried to do some research before reaching out to him, basically say that the mine closed at the turn of the 20th century. But that isn't true because my dad worked there within the 20th century. Mining continued off and on there when the price of gold, silver, copper was high enough to make it worthwhile. So it did kind of open and close over the decades. And he worked there in the mid to late 1960s, when in 1967 the price of gold was $35 an ounce, which consider it's 1967. And silver was $1.29 an ounce, and copper was a little more variable, but around 50 cents a pound. And then, so he worked there through the end of the 60s. By the early 70s, we were down in Denver because, honestly, Mom said that she put her foot down and said, when Kristen starts school, we can't be moving every 6 months to go from one mine to the next. Seasonally, we need to settle down into something more permanent. So we moved to Denver, where he picked up, worked in oil shale, and I'll get into oil shale in a second. So to finish out what happened at Summitville, because if you have heard of it, chances are you've either heard of it because of the extensive gold and silver that was found there at the in the 1850s, or you've heard about it because it was a Superfund cleanup site. It was a very kind of nasty thing. What happened there was in, I'll get there, 1982, Galactic Minerals Corp., a Canadian company, was there for about 8 years, and they extracted payloads. So rather than tunnel mining like it was when Dad worked there, they were doing basically tearing down the mountain and doing open pit mining. And they were then using cyanide to open the ponds or cyanide ponds to dissolve the payload and leave the precious minerals behind. So, of course, during a storm, the pond overflowed and the cyanide solution drained into Pinos Creek. And, of course, it flowed into towns. Del Norte is the town it really flowed into, and that then began the Superfund cleanup, where they had to then shut down and put everything back as much as they could.
There is one that happened more recent than that.
Okay.
The one where the Los Animas River.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, that was the fault of the EPA.
Yeah.
The EPA had the leaching pond all set, mm-hmm. and everything was there, and everything was supposedly contained, and somebody made an oops, and everything went spilling into the Los Animas River and down into, can't remember the name of the town.
Oopsie. That was in Summitville, though, right? That was from another mine.
No, that was down.
Cleanup.
That was down. I want to say Fontaine. Yeah, for the SCA.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't know either.
Gosh darn it! Now that you said Fontaine, I can't think of its real name. Oh gosh, I'll think of it.
Yeah.
All right. So then, when he came back down to Denver, well, and before that, like when I was first born, we lived up in Rifle, and he worked in oil shale. So a quick description of what oil shale is shale is a form of rock that's essentially like really thin layers. It almost looks like dried clay, only it's gray. And there's oil in that rock. And so what they would do is they would pull that out and then take it after it was extracted from the ground and process it to extract the oil from the rock. And from what I understand, this technique has been replaced by the infamous fracking that we hear about in Colorado so much now, where they essentially do the same thing, but they do it kind of at the source. So rather than mine the shale out, they just drill down and put those chemicals in the ground and pull, to have the oil separate out from the rock and pull out the oil that way. So as you might imagine, there's all kinds of concerns about that because it's done all over here in the Eastern Plains now, in urban areas even, which is, of course, concerning because we don't know the long-term ramifications of doing these things. And there have been some negative experiences with it.
Shale is a sedimentary rock. So basically what it is all those clays and sands and everything under pressure form layers.
Yeah.
And, then everything gets all compressed.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So when he worked in oil shale first was up in, I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, Piceance Basin. And it's northwest of Rifle, about 35 miles. So it is up in kind of getting close there to the Utah border. And what happened there is they never actually started the mine. They were planning a mine for 21 million tons a year.
21 million tons of what?
Of shale.
Okay.
To mine the shale out. And then planning on mining a 60-foot thick rock between, which contained 10% oil. So you've got 90% waste. It is an expensive endeavor, and it's really only done when the price of oil is sky high, and it's worth the investment to do it this way.
Well, geologically, that makes sense because if it's up near the Utah border, that's it. And you're talking about the northwestern portion of Colorado, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dinosaurs up there.
Yeah, exactly.
So all those fossils would lead to all that oil.
Yeah, exactly. So it all makes sense. It's all coming together. And while he didn't mention it, I know he worked in oil shale when we moved to Denver, and his office was between Golden and Boulder. I don't know if they were actually mining in that area or if that's just where their headquarters were, but so there was shale mining going on down here, which makes sense because now that's where a lot of the fracking sites are. So then other mining in Colorado, molybdenum is a big one. And so that was mined at Climax Mine and Berthoud Pass. And this is another site where they essentially tore down the mountain. Climax is really, you see the before and after pictures. And I mean, Climax was really a climax, like high peak. And now it's just this kind of high plain. And certainly a case of need versus environment. So molybdenum is what makes steel hard. I know there was a snide comment story that Dad told about that versus of the folks who fly, the environmentalists who fly in planes and want to shut down the molybdenum mines. It's like, well, you can't have it both ways.
So how does it relate to aluminum then?
It doesn't. It makes steel hard. Right.
But I know the story your dad said.
Yeah. Well, those are the nuts and bolts on the plane,
okay.
Not the frame.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The comment was, yeah, they should, if they don't want molybdenum mined, then they should fly in a plane where the nuts and bolts are made with steel without molybdenum in it, which essentially the vibrations of the plane would make them come apart quickly. It's also these days used in circuit boards, solar cells, flat screen TVs. I mean, so this is really demand and where the resources are.
Right.
In addition, there's uranium near Gateway.
Mm-hmm.
And then another large molybdenum deposit near Crested Butte, that's never been mined because it's owned by Crested Butte.
Right.
Yeah. And right now, skiing trumps.
Of course it does, because
Yeah.
there's money now versus money after you dig.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Let's see here. We already talked about that. Interesting silver mine. So I know we've talked about the $1 Million Highway. And so one of the stories that he's told me often as well is on the $1 Million Highway, you drive under a tramway, and that was used to develop the mine, and development rock was thrown down the mountain. And Dad has traveled through that mine where you get in on one side, you like get in on the Uray side, and you come out on the Silverton side, and travel all the way through the mountain to Telluride. So sorry, stand corrected. Where the mill is used to extract the silver and the other minerals, and then the tailings disposed of near the mill. Tailings are important because then the water runoff of the tailings means that gold panning goes on later. Case in point, gold and silver mining near Central City. And you pass all the old mines as you drive up to Central City. There you can still see evidence of the tailings today, even though the mines themselves are kind of disintegrating over time.
A lot of those casinos are built on the foundation of tailings.
Absolutely are. Yes. Yeah. And then he said the creek flowing from near Central City to the east was mined for the gold that was washed down as the rocks eroded. And with the tailings, that wasn't the stuff that wasn't caught through the tailings. And one of my high school professors had a story about that where for Coors, when Coors was built there at the bottom of that creek, they put in a kind of a dam and to kind of force the water to where they needed it to go for the brewery. And then that Rocky Mountain spring water that makes Coors so famous. And somebody had the thought to actually go and scrounge around at the base of the dam there and pulled out really chunks of gold that had just accumulated there over time.
Yep.
And so then of course everybody did that, and there's nothing there now. But for a time, that was a very pleasant surprise for somebody hanging out in Golden going, I'm bored. Let's see what's in there. Let's see. What else did he talk about? That was, the other, I think the last was second to last is, despite the name, both gold and silver are in Silverton.
Yep.
And coal is mined in northern Colorado between Steamboat Springs and Craig. There's also coal mining in Meeker.
Okay.
Yep. So that's
I never knew about the coal.
Yeah.
I never knew about the coal.
Yeah, you're right. The big coal we all think about is up in Wyoming.
Yeah, because that's open pit coal mining up in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And all those trains coming from Wyoming.
From Wyoming.
Down here.
Right. Yeah, but we do have a bit of that here. So that's my summary of mining from my dad.
Okay. Let's see. I do have notes. I had notes. I had a cursor. So let's see here. I did start talking a little bit about the gold rush and the history of it. In 1807, the explorer Zebulon Pike met the trapper James Purcell in Santa Fe, of all places, and learned that Purcell had found gold in the area known as Pike's Peak. So, of course, Zebulon Pike is there. Well, hey, I'm here to explore things because the government sent me to explore things. So let's go explore things considering gold. And maybe I can actually get a payday out of this too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he went down there. And that was quick. Okay. In 1850, Cherokees on their way to California found small amounts of gold in Ralston Creek and where Arvada is now.
Yeah.
So, in May of 1857, George Simpson found gold dust in Cherry Creek. I know that they found gold there earlier, but
Yeah.
He also found near the confluence of the South Platte and Cherry Creek. So that's where essentially where Auraria campus is.
Right. Yeah.
Is that confluence. That's also where Lodo is, lower
Yes.
downtown. There's a lot of history down there that still exists.
It really does.
It's a lot of fun to go look around.
And Confluence Park, they've redone it recently, and it's quite lovely.
They have changed the flow and the route of those rivers several times since the founding of this city.
Several times.
And all in the effort of flood mitigation.
Yeah.
I do remember I was driving for Pony Express. This was back in 94?
Yeah.
94, 95?
Pony, yeah.
Where the South Platte was flooding and Cherry Creek was flooding in downtown Denver.
Yeah.
And that water was coming up real close to the car bridges.
Yes.
It had, that beautiful little walkway ditch that they have there for Cherry Creek and everything.
All gone.
Was
all
underwater. Was underwater. Let's see, what else we got? Around the same time, gold nuggets were found near the future site of Denver by Fall Leaf. Yes, that's the name of a person, is Fall Leaf. And she was a Delaware Native American. And she found gold around about that area as well. But she had come from essentially the capital of the Kansas Territory, because Colorado was part of the Kansas Territory at that time. Let's see here. More extensive, or more excitement, was stirred in the summer of 1858 when the Russell brothers, William, Oliver, and Levi, all along with John Beck and a party of Cherokees from Georgia, this is what I was talking about, reached Ralston Creek, and they found a little gold there, and they headed farther upstream, and to the South Platte, past Cherry Creek, into Little Dry Creek.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they found gold there as well.
Okay.
So there's some of that there happening, and that's near Inglewood, essentially.
Yeah.
Let's see. They also found paying quantities of placer gold in the summer and fall in 1858. Hundreds of others followed them after that in the footsteps, and therefore the trickle became a little bit of a running brook into a rush.
Yes.
And everybody went up into them hills to find that gold. And everybody went up into Idaho Springs and Chicago Creek.
Mm-hmm.
George Jackson's the name of the guy who found the big chunks of gold in Chicago Creek, and also found lode gold up there. He also found lode gold up in Black Hawk because he followed the veins.
Yes.
So there we are.
Yep.
And that's why we always joke about that whole set of hills on the north side of the highway by Idaho Springs of being Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
It's because they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody was digging into that hill. It was so to the point where, there was an actual tunnel that was established between Idaho Springs and Black Hawk.
Yep. Until it flooded.
Yeah, and that flooded. If you take the tour of the Argo Mill and Gold Mine, they will tell you about this, and you can go walk to the front of that entranceway where there is water still flowing out of that tunnel now. Yeah. I don't know where the water comes from. I don't think I want to know where the water comes from. And there's all that. Let's see. Colorado Rush was referred to as the Pikes Peak Gold Rush. There was some prospecting around the Pikes Peak area in 1858, 1859. Major gold mining there didn't really begin until the 1890s. And that's why I'm talking about Cripple Creek, because that's when 1890 was the Cripple Creek Gold Rush. And
we were a state by then.
Or that was the Gold Strike in Cripple Creek. So that's why I kind of was raising my eyebrow. 1850, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he didn't say much to anybody else about it.
Well, he was a smart cowboy,
I guess. But the thing is, there are several stories out there of, these cowboys or these mountain men or whatever that are just doing their thing, trapping their beavers or running their cows, and they're sitting by the creek and they see something shiny in the creek, and lo and behold, they're pulling out a nugget as big as their thumb. Mm-hmm. So
Was that Ute territory?
Oh, yes.
So
Oh, yes.
this is why one doesn't say anything, because he probably shouldn't have been there in the
Yeah,
first
I was
place.
gonna say, he probably wouldn't ought to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it was probably a treaty at that time that says, okay, you can come this far, but no farther. Please don't.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, Cowboy is in places he shouldn't be.
Well, probably because his cows went places they shouldn't be, and
Yeah, and it shouldn't have been just him. Anyway, so yeah, that is in that the 1859 gold rush is what everybody calls it. Lasted honestly for 6 months.
right.
A lot of people moved on to California because the California gold rush was still going on then.
Oh yeah.
At 1849 was their gold rush up at Sutter's Mill.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people who were transitioning through basically, well, I'll just stop in Colorado for a little while, dig around here, and then I'll continue on to California.
Right. Get enough money to keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
So that worked out for them for a very, very tiny bit. Then everything died off. A lot of people just quit because gold mining's hard. Okay. It's not easy work.
No.
And you are never guaranteed a payday.
Right.
Never. There are times when you're going to be pulling out, I mean pounds of gold, and then all of a sudden it's gone. It's done.
Yeah. Well, silver as well. I'm thinking of Baby Doe and her matchless mine, where they made millions, and then she continued to live up there and died in poverty, froze to death actually in her own home.
Right. And then there was the Tabors, Little Johnny mine.
Yep.
So wait a minute. Baby Doe was matchless. Yes. Oh, no, I'm talking about Brown.
Molly Brown?
Molly Brown. That was Little Johnny mine.
Okay.
That was Little Johnny.
Yeah, I was going to say. I did a paper on the matchless mine.
Yeah, okay. Well, no, I'm not questioning you about that. I was questioning about which famous female miner was around. And we had the Tabors, we had the Browns, we had Baby Doe, and I don't remember her last name.
Baby Doe?
Was it Tabor?
Baby Doe. Yes.
Okay, so I got, that's the only two then. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because the Tabors and the Browns were our big silver moguls. Yeah,
and I think once they struck it big, he traded her in for a younger model, and she stuck with the mine. He took his riches and moved on, and kind of got out of the business, as it were,
right?
Of that particular mine, anyway. And but she stuck it out.
Yeah, she did. She stuck it out. I mean, and that's the other thing about mining. You go till it's exhausted.
Even then, some people don't believe it, and they keep thinking that it's just around the next corner.
Right. And again, we talked about not only gold. It's aluminum, molybdenum, lead, copper, silver. I know that I'm probably missing some.
Yeah,
tin,
and then eventually uranium, and
Well, and believe it or not, the big uranium push, that was from from the Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was happening all over the West and Southwest.
Yes.
It's
you had bigger outside of Colorado, but there we had a little.
Yeah, you had all these wildcatters going out and trying to find uranium.
Yeah.
That also leads to environmental impact. And we talked a little bit about environmental impact. One of the things I wanted to mention is that once you start pulling these rocks, these volcanic rocks, these igneous rocks out of the ground, there is a reaction.
Sure.
And it's an acidic reaction. And all those heavy metals that are in the rock get exposed to air and water, and they dissolve. And then they run off, into the springs or into the streams, into the rivers. Also, the fact that cyanide was used as a leaching agent to remove, to dissolve the rock to get to the gold.
Right.
Yeah.
Big time in Summitville, but that wasn't the only place that did it.
No, I mean, again, go to the Argo gold mill and mine.
Yeah, they talk about it
They
there.
talk about it up there, and they also show huge, giant cyanide leaching bins
Mm-hmm.
or leaching tanks.
Right.
It's worth a look. It really is, because once you crush all this load gold down, or all this load ore down, you've got to get to the gold somehow, and it's still adhering to all that quartz and iron and rock.
Yep. And you got to figure out how to separate it.
So yeah, you can crush it all down and heat it up, but then you got a lot of slag that you got to get rid of, and you're not getting a pure gold.
Right.
And everybody's after that pure gold.
Yep.
But yeah, you pull out this volcanic rock, and there's a lot of poisonous metals and heavy metals that are in the rock that
well, and even
it's a nasty business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even running off naturally, there are streams in Colorado that don't have life in them. They're beautiful, by the way, because they're crystal clear, from the natural runoff. And then, of course, mining exacerbated that big time.
Right.
But yeah, it's, I'm sure that's how they figured out that arsenic dissolved the,
it's cyanide dissolved.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Cyanide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because it happened naturally as well. And they thought, we can speed this process up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
But essentially now the environmental laws have made it so that you have to put it back the way you found it. So you mine, and particularly for the strip mining, they've got to replant, they've got to, resod.
They got to fill in the holes, and they've got to replant.
Yeah. And so that shut down a lot of mines, actually, because that's expensive, right? And so you have to consider that now as part of your mining expense when you're just when you're done, right? So if you don't start doing that until your minerals stop paying out, then suddenly you have no income and you got a lot of money left to spend.
Right.
So, you kind of have to rebuild as you go.
And so that's something that TV shows like Gold Rush, they touch on it, but they don't tell you the impact.
No, they don't.
Some of the things like I watched on Gold Rush, and this, I don't mean to make fun, but there's a couple of times when at the end they always talk about, this was another 1,000-ounce season, or 5,000-ounce season, 3,000-ounce season. How many of those ounces went back to pay for covering up the hole?
Yep.
Or for filling in the hole?
Yep.
And they don't really talk about it. They touched on it a couple of times.
Right.
They touched on it a couple of times, but they don't really talk about it. And honestly, I think that's something that's very sad, and honestly, I think it needs to be talked about a little bit more.
It really does, because you want to know that these folks are doing the right thing, and whether it's out of the goodness of their heart because they know it's the right thing to do, or because EPA requires it, you want to be able to see that.
Right.
And see that you're not buying blood money, or it's not really blood money, but you're not.
No, I know what you mean.
Buying these minerals or taking advantage and destroying the planet while they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, okay. One of the seasons that I was remembering is when Parker came back with his first 1,000-ounce season, and he showed his grandpa. Mm-hmm. And Grandpa Parker is standing there with Parker, or Grandpa Chernobyl. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah. Was standing there, and they're talking about how wonderful it was to see these millions of dollars sitting on this table.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was all he pulled out of there.
No. Probably not.
I don't think that was the total amount that he pulled out of the ground, because there had to be at least another 2 or 3 million that went back into the ground, or at least went to pay for covering or for reclamation purposes.
Yeah.
But yeah, gold. I want to stress that doing this for recreation, doing placer mining for recreation, is a lot of fun. I've done it. I've done the panning. I've done the I haven't done any sluicing. Okay, all I've done is panning, because I just took little spoonfuls of whatever, of rock, and shifted it around, and I found myself a flake or two.
Sure.
You know, a little flower gold here and there.
Mm-hmm.
I have not found anything significant. The only thing that I found significant in quantity was garnet.
Okay.
And that was in Clear Creek, just outside of, on 6th, just outside of Golden.
Okay.
And you have to be careful there too, because there's a couple of claims on that.
Yeah.
And don't just think you can pull off to the side of the road and do recreational panning.
Nope.
Pay attention. They have markers.
They do.
They have a marker. If there's if there's one of those stupid little wire things stuck in the ground with a little plastic flag on it, don't go panning there.
No, please don't.
Don't do it, because you never know. And you're probably going to end up with discovering those folks up in the Colorado hills that we don't talk about all that much. And
they don't take kindly to strangers stealing their stuff.
Exactly. And it's not the fact of they don't like you, it's the fact that they don't like you taking their things.
Well, yeah, I mean, who does, right?
You know, but anyway, I digress, and that's about all I really had. I don't know if there's anything else. Do you have anything else?
I don't. There are, other than to say, as from putting the tourist angle on it, there are mines here and there. Idaho Springs, we talked extensively about the Argo Gold Mill. There's also another mine up there that you can tour. You can tour Matchless Mine still.
Yes.
That's up in Leadville.
You can tour the Phoenix Mine.
Yes. And so if this is of interest to you, there are still there are places that you can go where you can experience it or get a tour and learn firsthand what it's like to go down into total darkness into a mine and have nothing but the lamp on your head leading your way.
Exactly.
You know, and it's kind of fun actually if you aren't claustrophobic, and it's an interesting experience. I did, of course, my day on the job for all of my growing up, probably because of my dad. I wanted to be a geologist. But of course, as I got to college age, the geology industry was not at all. Like layoffs everywhere. The oil industry and the mining industry was just flat. And so, in fact, I went to grad school, my MBA. All of my co-students were geologists trying to expand their horizons, as it were, so they could get a career in a different industry. And since then, Colorado has expanded and we have many other industries here. But at the time, it was kind of mining and the plains, ranching and things.
Oh, yeah.
And that was about it. And now it's so different. But yeah, so I did my middle school day on the job going down into a mine up in Central City. And I had a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun digging holes in the ground.
Yeah. See, you're a little different than me. I would not go in a mine.
Okay.
I would not go in a underground mine. I won't go in a tunnel mine.
All right.
It's not the fact that I don't like it. I mean, one of our first dates that we had together was going up to the fault caves.
Right.
Speaking of geology, the fault caves are essentially that. It's a cave on a fault line.
Yep.
And it's blocks of rock that have fallen and opened a void into the hill. So that's where we went, and we had ourselves a good time and crawled around and saw a little bat.
Yep.
And, had a great time. But I won't do it for looking for minerals. I won't do it looking for metal. And the reason is because I know what it takes to get it, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm happy with washing rocks.
Okay.
Okay. I'll wash rocks. I'll do that. But I won't do hand steel. I won't do drill steel. I won't do explosives. I won't do going in there with a hard hat and praying that something doesn't kill me.
It's fair enough.
I just won't do that.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd do it for a living.
Oh.
When I was wanting to be a geologist, it was more on the mineral side or on the gemstone side of things and other kinds of,
which we talked about last time.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
And other kinds of things. But the mining, to me, it was fascinating to go down into a mine.
Oh yeah. I agree. It's fascinating. I just don't want to do it for a job.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, unless I'm the one blowing stuff up, that would be fun.
No, even then, no.
Well, because you're not in the mine, you go place the charges, and then you get the heck out of there, and then you blow it up for the distance.
No. I have new special effects, so I'm using them.
Woo.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I have new special effects. Yes. Anyway, that's about all I had. I don't know if there's anything else that we really need to talk about.
I don't think so, but we can talk about what we're going to do next time, which is move further south, perhaps?
I think Southern Colorado needs to be talked about now.
I think so, too. Yep.
We've alluded to it. We've talked about it a little bit, and I think it needs to happen now. And this will also... The next rock talk that I want to do is talk about the geology of Colorado and the volcanoes of Colorado.
For sure, yeah.
Because I talk about it a lot, but one, how the Rocky Mountains were formed, and two, why we have volcanoes. I think that it needs to happen. So, and since Pagosa Springs is down there,
that's right. Is this a field trip? Can we go to Pagosa Springs?
You know, our anniversary's coming up next year.
That's right.
So, and well, summer ain't done.
No, it is not biological.
So, it would be interesting if I could do it.
Yeah,
I
know.
So, I don't know.
It's a long drive for sure. But we have friends down there now.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. So, I think we should try it. Join us next week or in 2 weeks, and we'll be figuring out something else.
Yep, we'll probably do Southern Colorado, and then I can do an episode on skiing. Well, and we can have Alice as well, and you, and I know Alice has some other fun winter activities that she loves to do, like snowshoeing.
Right.
Is her big thing, I think.
Yeah, the only thing I've got is tubing and sledding.
Yeah.
That's it.
We have fun places for that, too.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot, folks. Thank you for joining us. I know it's a very strange and different talk, but, here we are. Please hit that like, hit that subscribe, and definitely send a comment or two. The algorithm really, really likes it when that happens. It really does.
Yes.
So,
please do.
So anyway, thanks a lot, folks, and we will catch you
2 weeks?
In 2 weeks.